We are live again. If you've missed me last week, I've been on holidays. I'm going to talk today all about how women can get ideas heard without being tagged as bossy. Or maybe another B word you might get. Or sometimes I've also heard, well, if I start to share ideas or even claim my ideas, they might see me as being domineering. And somehow all of these have really negative connotations for a lot of women. So if you are finding you're struggling with how do I get the attention that to my ideas, or even get to claim the ideas that I have created, or in my innovation that I've shared, then this live is for you. I'm also going to share 3 really common missteps that a lot of women in leadership make that keep them actually undervalued and overlooked. So I'm just going to warm this up a little bit in the sense of waiting for a couple people to jump on. So if you've got any questions, drop comments. And before I get too far into all the details on the 3 things that you may be doing, what I've seen after coaching 60 plus women in leadership that I have found that they are doing, and I'm going to share those. But in the meantime, I want you to also get you the opportunity to jump onto my no cost workshop training that I'm doing on Thursday. And that is all about how you can turn your unheard ideas into strategic influence in 7 days. Make sure you grab your spot. You can click the link. It should be either in the description above or below this video that you're watching. As well, if you are feeling like you're tired of being overlooked in leadership roles and you can't wait for that training on Thursday, then I want you to DM me AUDIT, and we will have a 30-minute leadership audit going through what's happening. And then I will give you some tips, strategies based on that audit of where you can improve. So both are very exciting things to do. All right, so let's dive into this. Again, as always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them below in the comments, or you can always DM me with your questions. My inbox is an open and safe space for any and all questions that are coming in. So I wanted to, if you have missed me the past week, like I said, I have been traveling. You may have caught a couple of the posts that I was visiting family. So my sister was getting married this weekend, so it was absolutely fabulous. And I'm back at it today after arriving back home yesterday. So feeling a little bit jet lagged with an 8-hour time difference, but no less excited to share with you today. And I'm going to talk about the 3 things that almost every woman in leadership that does and is doing that's causing them to stay undervalued and overlooked, no matter how hard you're working. Because this is one of those things I hear so often from women that I speak to. Is like, well, I'm working incredibly hard. I'm spending a lot of hours. I'm doing all these different projects, and somehow I'm still not getting any recognition. I still see less qualified, what they think are less qualified individuals being promoted out from either sometimes from underneath them into more senior roles, or their colleagues that may not be doing anywhere near the amount of work that you're doing or they are doing, are being promoted out and again into more senior roles. We're getting tapped for those special projects, those high visibility projects. And if you're anything like the high achieving women that I've been working with, and the women in leadership positions that I've been working with in the past 2.5 years, then you may be going, I'm really either I want to get to that next level of promotion, or I simply just want to be recognized for the value and the contribution that I'm bringing, but somehow something's missing. So what could that be? So the first thing that I want to share, which is one of those common mistakes that's happening, is you're likely focusing on the results and not promoting the results that you've achieved to key leaders within the organization, thinking oftentimes that your work is going to speak for itself. Now, this could be a number of reasons, right? You might be, we've all been taught if you work hard, like going to school, if you work hard, then success will come. It's not always that guaranteed, right? You may also have been told, there's a saying in Dutch, if you do normally, then that's already crazy enough. So you don't want to really show up too much. You promoting your results might feel like you're bragging or you're starting to get arrogant, and you don't want to be seen as that either. Or another one that comes up is you might feel like, well, if I'm promoting myself to the senior leaders or key leaders in the organization, shouldn't that be what someone else is doing? Like, isn't it better if my manager or my leaders are sharing my results? That speaks more loudly to my capabilities than if I were to promote it myself. All of these, there's likely going to be others, but at least those three are really main reasons that I see that women stop themselves from promoting their results. A, because they think it could speak for itself, but also, like I said, you're hoping that someone else is going to do it for you. You think it's going to be arrogant or egotistical if you do it yourself, and you stay stuck. You don't get recognized because your work isn't going to speak for itself. Your work most likely can't speak. And what happens is you will oftentimes find that your results are someone else actually walks away with the credit for your results. So as an example, I had one client who had additional work, took on an additional project on her full-time position. And when she went on mat leave, they split that up. So that project became one person's entire position, and they didn't do even as much as she did in as an add-on to her work. And they ended up being promoted based off of that project, which can show you a lot about how are you in terms of your promotion. So when you're achieving your results and you're gaining results, that's fantastic because you still want to be a leader who gets results. But don't forget, a key component of that is also to start promoting yourself throughout the organization as well as to key leaders. Now, the second mistake that I often see is you're not stepping up for promotion opportunities. So you take a step back when it comes to projects and opportunities for promotion, waiting for someone else to tell you that you're good enough to do that job. Now, it sounds kind of like a bit weird, right? But in a sense, if you're doing that, it's like if you're taking that step back from a promotion opportunity, then you're actually perpetuating that belief and that myth of yourself that you're not ready or you're not willing to take on more responsibility or take on that new role or even that high profile project. So you're actually inadvertently, because you're hesitating, you're inadvertently causing that's going to happen more often, and you're going to be even more undervalued and overlooked because of that. And the third mistake that I've often seen is really working incredibly hard and seeing that as your contribution to the organization. So similar to your focus on your results, but you're not promoting it, here a slight difference is you continue to work really hard and think, well, as long as I'm putting in all the hours and I'm doing, all of the extra work, then that's my contribution. That's the value that I add to the organization. And here's the thing. You could be working incredibly hard. You can be working long hours. But if that's the only way that you're adding value, then someone else could literally work half an hour longer than you. And that would be seen as being more of a contribution to the organization than you are. We all know that's not true. So if we look at all of these mistakes, you might have outstanding results that go unnoticed because you're not your own advocate for them. So think about it in a way of, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? What do you think? Similarly, if you're again, I'm going to repeat myself here. If you're sidestepping your promotional opportunities, you're perpetuating the myth that you're not ready or willing. And while your commitment to your job, so working hard, can be vital, and I never encourage people to just kind of slack off. That's not what it is. But there is also a really thin line between being dedicated to your work and committed to your work and self-exploitation. So that you become this incredible workhorse for your organization that can be exploited, but doesn't actually get recognition that you deserve. Now, I want to give you a couple of different examples. So if you look at women like Mary Barra or Jeannie Rometty, they understood early on that merely clocking hours and hoping someone notices isn't enough. So they believed in their own worth. They took charge of the narrative. So think about your personal branding. What's the narrative that is spoken about you within the organization or within the industry when you're also not in the room? So if you're not driving that narrative with your own input and feeding that narrative to your key leaders, to key industry leaders, someone else will, or they'll fill in the gaps. And you may have a narrative and a personal brand that you either don't recognize or don't agree with. And it'll definitely be incomplete. Let's add that on the end. Now, they took charge. So Mary Barra, and Jeannie Rometty, they took charge of the narrative and they complemented all of their hard work with really ensuring that they positioned themselves positively and well within their organizations as well as within the industry. Now, there's a difference. You might think, okay, well, great, thank you. I've identified all these 3 mistakes, but now what? So here's one of a great strategy that is taught that I've included within my LeadHERship Edge Formula, which is called the Boardroom Whisper Technique. Now, what this is all about, it's all about not just being in the room, but it's actually owning the room. And where this boardroom whisper technique comes in is I want you to ensure that your voice doesn't just become part of the background noise in crucial meetings, but that it resonates, that people hear you. And I really want to be careful here because it's not about adding more volume, because you might be thinking, well, I don't want to be seen as bossy or domineering. And as women, and I've experienced this myself, if we raise our voices, then we are overly emotional, or if we don't speak up enough, maybe we're too timid. It always seems to be a really hard balancing act for women, especially in leadership positions, to find that right tone and that right volume in order to be heard, but also for it to resonate. Now, consider it in a couple of different ways. One, when we're talking about the boardroom whisper technique, I am not talking about just sharing your opinions or over explaining your point of view, because that's another mistake we won't get into today. But over explaining is something that happens quite a lot. And there's also this belief that if you share your opinion, then that is sufficient enough and that should carry weight. But really, what it's about is about identifying the key conversation points and effectively anchoring them in. Anchoring them in could be simply a ways of you building upon an existing idea and then sharing with a few neat little ways, sharing and showcasing your own expertise. So again, you're promoting your own results and your own expertise, or by taking those conversation points, those key conversation points, and adding into your own insights and your own ideas and ensuring that you are credited with those ideas and those innovative ways of thinking. So you can think of it like in the sense of, well, everyone else could be talking and sharing all their opinions. You are a game changer who's ensuring that you're the one that steers the narrative of the conversation. So rather than diving into every conversation that you have, you want to recognize the pivotal moments where your input can swing the pendulum one way or the other, and directing and becoming more that strategic decision maker. So imagine if you were able to identify and act on ththose moments, where your expertise and perspective are invaluable. Now, this is what the magic of having a strategic approach like the boardroom whisper technique, which is coming from my LeadHERship Edge Formula. Now, imagine understanding exactly which moments in the meeting are yours to shine and harnessing them effectively. It's about seizing those moments and making them count. So reflect for a minute on the exceptional women leaders that you admire. Do they spend all their energy simply trying to fit it into a specific mold, being a specific type of leadership style, or are they carving out their unique space? Now let's consider For another example, Michelle Obama or Oprah Winfrey, they don't really just echo what's already been said. Instead, they introduce perspectives that captivate, inspire, and challenge the norm that exists. So if you've been feeling like a background note in crucial meetings, like if I'm there, people won't notice. If I'm not there, people also won't notice, right? It's time to transition into being more that voice that everyone remembers. Because after all, isn't it more rewarding to steer the conversations, drive the change, and leave an indelible mark on your organization rather than just being another voice lost in the noise? So, if that is you, here's two things you can do. One, I go into even more detail on the Boardroom Whisper technique and that strategy within my how to turn your ideas into unheard ideas into strategic influence in 7 days. This is a workshop training that's coming up again on this Thursday. So you can grab the link, grab your seat. There's no cost associated with it, but come to that 60 minutes full of value and information as well as strategies on how you can take this Boardroom Whisper technique and apply it for your own situation, as well as other steps. And at the end, you get a 7-day step-by-step action plan on what you can do in order to take your ideas from unheard into strategic influence in 7 days. Second action you can take, if this is you, if you want to start driving that change, really steering the conversations, and again, you don't want to wait until Thursday, but you want to get your own personalized strategy right now, then DM me the word audit and I will get you in for a leadership audit, which means that we are going to look at, I've got a series of questions for you just to assess where you are in your leadership journey. And then based on that audit, I can give you some really personalized strategy and some really personalized action that you can then take in order to elevate your leadership to go from background noise to the one that is driving the conversations and is really becoming that go-to strategic leader. Now, thank you so much for listening. As always, if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments. I always go through the comments, I read them. Alternatively, if you want to DM me and send me a private message with your questions, or again, DM me audit, or you can't find the link, that's the case, then just DM me training and I'll make sure you get a link to that training on Thursday. And thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you again on Friday.